What did Roki Sasaki ask teams to do when he was being courted? And is this the best Dodgers offseason ever? Let's talk about it. Let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. This is the daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. You can make that easier on yourself by subscribing and get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube like we are here on Sunday night. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. I'm Vince Samperio. That's Jeff Snider. And we are the co-hosts of Locked On Dodgers. We've been doing this podcast now going into year 7. We've been covering the Dodgers in our own respective ways for going into year 11. And we've been Dodger fans our whole life. So the Dodgers have been a part of us, a part of our lives, and will continue to do so. And it feels like, at least for me, the first half of my life has now been rewarded with the second half of my life in terms of being a Dodger fan, because the first half of my life, I didn't get to see many Dodger playoffs appearances or victories, and a lot of players that ended up leaving the Dodgers. And now, Jeff, got a couple World Series, some World Series appearances. Playoffs are basically formality at this point, and the Dodgers won't stop signing and trading for people.
Yeah, there's definitely, even basically, if you are old enough to remember before this stretch of success began. So if you're in your late teens, you're probably old enough to remember a time when things weren't always so rosy. And, people your age in your 30s who lived through some rough times, definitely can appreciate this. And people my age lived through some even rougher times. Around the time you were born, the Dodgers were really, really bad there for a year or two. And then even later, they got bad again. It's been rough, and so it's hard to feel bad about what is this 12 straight years of making the postseason, 2 World Series titles, a third one robbed. And, that stolen World Series, I think, we talked last week about Andrew Friedman's origin story, his villain super arc or whatever. I think having the 2017 World Series stolen is part of that. And then, having people disregard the 2020 World Series as if it doesn't count when, the season was short. Okay, the postseason was longer. That's the hard part. And then losing twice in the NLDS, all of that just kind of added up. And the Dodgers had just said, all right, there's no way to guarantee a World Series title, but we are absolutely going to do every possible thing we can to give ourselves the best chance to win a World Series title every year.
Yeah, and he said he didn't want to really have to make moves at the deadline. That's still a possibility, obviously, if injuries and other things occur. But, you have a team right now that has depth at almost every spot, at least, some capable depth, more so in the pitching than in the position player side. But realistically, position players aren't as costly as pitching when it comes to the deadline. So, you set yourself up in a good spot for that. One of those reasons the Dodgers have depth at pitching is Roki Sasaki. We got an article in the Athletic with a bunch of contributors, kind of what that process was of Roki, what he did, and kind of similar to something I mentioned last week. Basically, he asked every team that was going into it why they believe his velocity dropped and how they think he can get it back to where it was before last season. And kind of goes with some I mentioned last week, like if he's asking teams to help him out and then he doesn't pick that team and the team helped him out, what are you going to get out of it? That's kind of what the article alluded to a little bit, where some teams were wondering, what's proprietary, what's not when it comes to helping a free agent out. But also, team didn't want to risk not being able to sign Roki Sasaki, so I'm assuming he got some information, maybe not all information from every team, but enough to, kind of kick some ideas around. And he ends up choosing the Dodgers, so we don't have to worry about did the Dodgers help him become better for another team.
Yeah, this is a really interesting, smart way to do this when you are in a situation like him where he knows because of how inexpensive he's going to be, every team would theoretically like to be involved. It's a really good way to weed teams out. I've hired a lot of people in my previous life. I hired a lot of computer programmers, and we always had them program something for us. Show us what you can do, because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I built this software, I built this, or in the case of a baseball team, well, we win a lot, we do this, but this practical demonstration of, I would tell people, no, code this for me right here on the spot. Roki said, debug me, tell me how you would analyze my problem. Another thing that I love about it is the fact that Roki apparently doesn't know why his velocity fell off, which suggests to me it's not an arm problem. So, of course, sometimes people don't know their arm is hurt until it's hurt really badly. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's not injury related. And maybe he found out from that a lot of teams do think it's injury related. I don't know, but I was very pleasantly surprised that we got this much information this early after he signed. I mean, this came out the day that he announced he was coming to the Dodgers. They'd been working on this for a while. I guess they knew a lot of teams that were out of the running, so people they could talk to. And yeah, like you said, some teams thought it was really clever, and others thought, you're just trying to milk us. And I wonder, some of the more surprising teams that didn't meet in person, like, the Mariners were surprising just because their history with Japanese ball players. I wonder if it had something to do with them not being interested in doing the homework assignment. We don't think we have a chance. If what people are saying is right, that everybody kind of thought he was going to the Dodgers, well then, if you don't think you have a chance, why would you do the homework assignment? Just kind of back out, focus your energy elsewhere. But really, really, I've never heard of another player doing something like this. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I haven't heard about it.
Yeah. I can imagine when Ohtani came over. I don't know if there was, there's a lot of stuff written about that. I wasn't not sure if there was a specific homework assignment like, hey, this is what I want to hear. But obviously teams are trying to pitch. I would imagine the Dodgers pitch was, how could you still do two things when, there's no DH right now currently in the National League? I'm sure other teams are trying to sell them on different things. And ultimately for Roki, when it comes down to this, you trust the Dodgers. Especially considering teams like the Mariners weren't really in it. Teams like the Rays weren't really in it. Teams that also are named when you're talking about, pitching. I think the Guardians, I don't think they got a meeting. So those might've been the teams that, hey, we're so smart that we don't believe that we should have to tell you this unless you pick us. And that's one way to go about it. And you feel comfortable enough in your organization to go that way. And, that's fine. And, the Dodgers probably felt comfortable doing this because the way their team was built, the fact of the matter is the Dodgers didn't need Roki. We talked about this a lot. It's not a luxury 100%, but mostly a luxury to get this type of caliber arm for the price they got him and sliding into a rotation, in the bottom half of this rotation as it currently stands. So it's interesting to see all that. I think obviously the coolest part of the article was towards the end when, Roki let teams know he was going to decide this day. He was going to let the teams know that didn't get him first, and then he was going to let the team know that did get him. And the Dodgers found out, not from Roki Sasaki, but from a text from Shohei Ohtani saying, we got him.
Yeah, it seems like he was saying, you'll find out on Instagram, but he texted Shohei Ohtani apparently because the Dodgers found out a couple minutes before. And you can definitely tell from this article, how unsure the Dodgers, either the Dodgers whole front office is made up of Oscar caliber actors, or they didn't know. They were hopeful, they were optimistic, they thought they put their best foot forward, but it sounds like Roki kind of played it close to the vest until he called or texted Shohei and said, I'm going to come play with you. And Shohei texted the team and let them know. Yeah, it's a great article. This, The Athletic is hit or miss for me sometimes. This article is outstanding, well written, well sourced, and a lot of really interesting new information that we hadn't seen anywhere else before.
Yeah. So, that's fun. I'm sure everyone will get asked more questions on the Dodgers side. Ohtani is probably not going to give much insight. I don't imagine Roki would give much insight, but hey, it'll get asked. We'll maybe find out more. There might be other things that come in the future. And the other part of all this is it did seem like some teams were maybe a little perturbed how things ended up going, where he still ended up choosing the Dodgers. But hey, that's why we're going to talk about this is the best Dodgers offseason ever. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting, down to the final 4 teams in the NFL playoffs. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, that's $300 to keep the action going. We got some good matchups: Eagles, Commanders, and Bills, Chiefs. Might be hard to straight up pick those, so you might want to pick some other things. Saquon Barkley to get a certain amount of rushing yards or maybe score a touchdown might be a decent bet. Josh Allen to score a rushing touchdown might be a decent bet. All those can be done on the FanDuel app. And remember, $5 bet, you win that, you get $300 in bonus bets to put on a myriad of things. And when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around for your winnings, so you'll get those bonus bucks right in your account instantly. If you use those bonus bets to make actual bets and win actual money, that'll get right into there. And, you can use that to buy Dodger tickets or whatever else you want to buy. FanDuel has you covered. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com, join today, and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers one of your listens of your day, whether it be first listen, last listen, in the middle, whatever it is. We appreciate you.
Or 2 listens today.
Yeah, 2 listens. If you watched this episode and said, why haven't they mentioned Tanner Scott much? That's because Jeff already talked about Tanner Scott signing with Clint Pasillas earlier. You can go back and find that on YouTube where we get podcasts. And, it's going to lend itself a little bit here with Tanner Scott talk, because we're talking about the Dodgers offseason and how it could be the best ever, coming off the heels of an offseason that could be calculated as the best ever. And, yeah, so I didn't get to talk about Tanner Scott. I don't have too much different to say than what was said earlier. The 4 years, $72 million. I didn't think he'd get 480. I wasn't entirely sure that he would come to the Dodgers. Jeff was, and the Dodgers continue to keep giving us what we want. As skeptical as I remain, or not as fully confident, it keeps happening. And this one sets the Dodgers up obviously well in a few different ways. It lengthens the bullpen. It gives them some freedom to get through the regular season. And I think that's the biggest part of it is, I don't know if it was someone that mentioned, I don't know if it was something I read or someone that actually said this, but, basically last Dodger season started in mid-March and went all the way through October. And a lot of those bullpen arms were pitching big innings and important innings and a lot of innings. And, with all the depth they have on this roster, they're going to have to find ways to fill those innings. And Tanner Scott helps out because now Blake Trinan doesn't have to shoulder that load. Michael Kopech doesn't have to shoulder that load. Tanner Scott didn't have to pitch all the way to the end of October. So he has a little bit more of a fresh arm, and that's the way it's going to go for the Dodgers. But you put Tanner Scott, even if the Dodgers had just signed Tanner Scott this offseason, it would be, okay, that's cool. Like, the Dodgers still have a good team. You throw in the fact that they brought back Teoscar Hernandez, okay, even better. You throw in the fact, Hae-Sung Kim from Korea, we don't know too much how he's going to be, but hey, that's interesting move, to say the least. They extend Tommy Edman. Okay, Edman's here for a while. We have middle of the infield, center field, locked up for the next few years. And then, you add Blake Snell on top of that, and you look around, and Michael Conforto is just, hey, this guy might be pretty good for us. He's been good offensively in the past. And we have a role in the outfield. You put all that together, Jeff, and it's hard not to see why we're continuing to smile on this podcast and why social media continues to melt down.
Yeah, it is not the most popular set of moves for non-Dodger fans. But like I was telling Clint earlier today, the Dodgers at the end of the season, they made a list of holes that they had and how they wanted to fill them. And they basically, I suspect they got basically their first choice at every hole they wanted to fill. This bullpen piece for Tanner Scott, bullpen wasn't necessarily a need. Like we've talked about before, it was, you can never have too many good relievers. And I do think sometimes, even if you've got enough relievers, you want more high leverage guys, just because sometimes you go through a stretch where you play 5 straight games that are close in the late innings. And if you have 3 high leverage guys you trust, they're going to get burned out. Having 6 or 7 high leverage guys, obviously much better. All in all, like, it's funny because Dodgers obviously committed a lot more money last year. And part of that is because Ohtani was a 10-year contract and Yamamoto was a 12-year contract. And Glasnow's extension was whatever it was, 5 years. And so there was the long-term deals. And it's hard to compete with an offseason in which you sign the best player in baseball, who then goes on to win the MVP, get 50-50, and help lead you to a World Series title. But if you can top it, maybe it's what the Dodgers did this year, because you look at where you're starting from. They won the most games in baseball last year. They won the World Series, and then they added and added and added and added and added. They are a better team, probably significantly better team right now than they were the team that won the World Series just 3 months ago. But the fact is, the Dodgers almost didn't win the World Series last year. The Dodgers were down 2-1 in the NLDS. The Dodgers were very, very close to going home in the first round of the playoffs for the 3rd straight year. And so that's why you can't just sit back and say, well, we won the World Series, let's just run it back. Same guys, let's do it again, guys. Because if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. And as like I've said, I understand why fans of other teams are frustrated, but I sure hope they're aiming most of that frustration at their own ownership, their own front offices, because every team should be sitting down and making a list of their holes and how they want to fill them and being competitive in these things. The fact is, Tanner Scott was a free agent for 3 months. And there's one report that he wanted to go to the Cubs, but the Cubs didn't even get to 4 years in their offer until like today. And it was too late by that point, and they still didn't match the Dodgers offer. And so, I guess that's because the Cubs owner is just so cash poor. Poor guy. I don't know how he's just barely rubbing 2 nickels together. But the Cubs fans probably deserve to have Tanner Scott on their team. But Cubs ownership and Cubs front office didn't want to do that. And the Dodgers front office did, and they got it done. And as Dodger fans, we're pretty happy about that.
Yeah, it's, last season could be categorized as best offseason effort because it directly led to a World Series title. Like Yamamoto, Teoscar, and Ohtani all directly led to a title. But the Dodgers team, I don't want to say flawed going into the season, but it was counting on some things that you weren't sure what was going to happen. One of those being Gavin Lux, which, mixed bag there, pretty bad for most of the season, picked up toward the end of the season, and he had some moments in the postseason. So it ultimately worked out. But, you had Mookie Betts having to move to shortstop right before the season started with no real backup plan or contingency plan other than, okay, Miguel Rojas, you can try to play every day. And now this year, I think why it makes it better is because you're going into the season with Chris Taylor might be the one flaw on this roster currently. And even then, like, you can talk yourself into, hey, he was better in the second half of the season. And hey, if he's the number 26 guy on your roster, your team is probably pretty good. And I think that's why. And the fact that, the Dodgers they're not excessively spending money, but they're spending money on pitching that we haven't necessarily seen before. Yamamoto got the $300 million last year. We knew that they were in on Garrett Cole in the past and other guys, but they ultimately, didn't really spend too much money. They got Blake Snell early. They're, now they're paying a reliever, $18 million a year. Obviously, there's deferrals and everything else, but you're paying a top flight reliever. They paid Jansen, but Jansen was part of the team and probably got that money more so for that. Not more so, but for that reason helped out that he was already part of the Dodgers and he was, also very good. So all in all, I mean, it's fun. It does set up the Dodgers as a fan. It sets up the Dodgers like, oh, if they don't win, everything else. But we don't have to worry about that anymore like we did in the past because they are coming off a win. So we're still celebrating that. And you feel better that this team who's bringing back almost everybody and got plus Blake Snell and Tanner Scott and Roki Sasaki are going to get it done again because they already got it done once.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like for me, I feel like there's less pressure. Obviously, the players, the front office, they all want to win another World Series. For me as a fan, like if the Dodgers don't win the World Series, and like we've said, there's still probably like a 75% chance, whatever odds you look at, 75% chance that the Dodgers don't win the World Series just because it's really hard to win 3 straight postseason series, even if you are the best team. It hardly ever happens. But if they don't, as a fan, I can know the Dodgers did everything that they could. And that's all I can ask for as a fan. Like, yes, the players still have to show up and perform. And hopefully they will when the time comes. But if they don't, at least as a fan, I can know. But they left it all on the field. The front office did all they had. And the fact that, like, you talk about the team being flawed in 2024. They threw four bullpen games out of 16 postseason games. Like that's something they never want to do again. And they had big stretches of the regular season where Kevin Biggio and Nick Ahmed were getting regular plate appearances. Like, it's a long season. You can never have too much depth. You can never have too much pitching, all those things. And, fact is, Andrew Friedman's probably still going to have to make trades at the trade deadline. There's going to be some hole that opens up either due to injury or ineffectiveness or something, and he's going to have to make trades. But he's doing everything he can to identify the most likely spots that he might have to trade in July and get those filled right now.
Yeah, so we're going to talk more about just the Dodgers in general and, Joe Kelly and other players' thoughts on how the Dodgers and how salary cap and everything else that people are freaking out about work. So we'll talk about that. Make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. If you've used Rocket Money, you probably found some subscriptions you forgot you were paying for or that you were paying for twice. That's definitely something that Rocket Money has helped me out. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't realize I was still paying for or just was too lazy to go through the process of canceling and having to do whatever it is, whatever that process is for a couple bucks a month. But Rocket Money can help you out. They can help you get those couple bucks a month back and a couple bucks and a couple bucks and a few bucks and some more bucks. And they can help you because they help their members save up to $740 a year when you use all the app's premium features. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. If you're not somebody that has all these subscriptions, but you do have a goal in mind of something you want to accomplish in terms of finances, then Rocket Money can help you out there because they have a goals feature, which automatically sets aside money for your future use. No more stressing about budgeting every month. So go download go to rocketmoney.com to cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on today. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on. One more time, rocketmoney.com/locked on. Want to thank you for being an everydayer. If you are one, an everydayer is just someone that listens or watches every day. We appreciate those of you that are everydayers. We notice some of you guys here in the live chat on YouTube. We definitely notice you guys all the time, all over whenever you guys mention it. But we appreciate everyone that listens and hope you continue to listen and make sure to subscribe. And if you want to go beyond the podcast, you can become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You get text directly from us, keeping you up to date with all Dodgers news and thoughts and rumors and all that fun stuff. And you can also get an exclusive link to a Discord server to talk with other Dodger fans. The chat is fun, and I would imagine it's going to get more fun once we get into season. So make sure to go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. All right, Jeff. Joe Kelly had some thoughts on salary cap in MLB. We've seen a few players have some thoughts, former players mostly, about Dodgers and salary cap and deferred money and everything else. And I may have missed it, but so far, everything I've seen from former players basically kind of says what we say. Dodgers aren't running baseball. Other teams are kind of in that mix. Yes, the Dodgers have financial advantage, but other teams can spend. And, that's kind of the beauty of no salary cap is if a team like the Padres wants to spend a lot of money one offseason, they can do so. It didn't quite work out the way they maybe would have wanted. The Mets have done the same thing. The Dodgers have done the same thing. They've spent a lot of money or had high payrolls and not, won the World Series. But ultimately, free market, everyone's happy other than fans, I guess.
Yeah, fans of all but one team, I guess. But yeah, it is funny how the narrative has changed over the last couple of years. You remember when they signed Shohei Ohtani, it was all that just to lose in the first round of the playoffs, hurdy-dur, Mickey Mouse ring, hurdy-dur-dur-dur-dur. And now all of a sudden the Dodgers ruin baseball when they're just kind of doing the same thing. They're just trying to go out and build the best team possible. Dodgers had high payrolls when they were not winning the World Series, and now they still have high payrolls. And here's what Joe Kelly said, talking about the salary cap. He said, let's say Shohei Ohtani could only make $10. The whole entire league could pay Shohei Ohtani $10. He's coming from Japan, growing up, watching movies, and if you just do a quick Google search, best places to visit when you're going to America, Minnesota's not popping up. Pittsburgh's not popping up. Milwaukee's not popping up. Why would he be like, oh, I'm going to make $10 in Milwaukee? That's the problem with the salary floor and the salary cap that people don't understand. Even if every team could pay him $10, he's going to go to team number one, which is a great destination to be at. Number two, you have to show him what separates your team at that point. And that's something kind of going back to what we talked about with Roki Sasaki the other day. All this talk about salary cap, the Dodgers were at a financial disadvantage, and they got Roki Sasaki. And Shohei Ohtani, we know at least two other teams made him the same offer. And he called in a third team, the Angels, and said, if you make me this offer, I'll sign with you instead. So it wasn't the Dodgers outbidding everybody. It was him choosing the Dodgers. But you imagine, like, I saw an interesting tweet today. It's like, imagine the Red Sox didn't cheap out and trade Mookie Betts. Imagine the Braves didn't cheap out and go for cheaper guy in Matt Olson instead of re-signing Freddie Freeman. Imagine the Angels said, okay, Shohei, we'll match that offer. Come back home. The Dodgers wouldn't have any of the MV3. And all of that is because other teams cheaped out. And the Dodgers said, okay, yeah, I mean, I guess if you guys don't want these MVPs, sure, we'll pay them to come play for us. How is that the Dodgers' fault? And the fact is now we're seeing, Tanner Scott had a bigger offer from the Red Sox, apparently, chose to come to the Dodgers. Blake Snell chose not to go through to, maximize every offer all offseason, said, I've done that. I want to go win a World Series with the Dodgers. Teoscar Hernandez said, other teams could have offered me more. I don't care. I was going to come back to the Dodgers. Like, this is where people want to be. And, for a lot of different reasons, including they win, they have a great organization, they help players get better, they take great care of the families. Clint and I talked about that earlier today. The fact that Teoscar Hernandez press conference, his main thing he talked about was how well the Dodgers take care of his family. Like, he's like, oh yeah, also they're paying me some money, but they're so good at taking care of the family. And the fact that Roki Sasaki didn't have his meeting at Dodger Stadium because Dodger Stadium is currently being renovated. The ownership is spending a ton of money to make it an even better place to play. It's just a world-class organization. And even if you had a salary cap, the best players are still going to want to come to the Dodgers because they've proven that they are the best organization.
Yeah, I mean, there's sports with salary caps, and the NBA and NFL have different. They have salary caps, but the NBA has structured contracts pretty much. Like, you can only offer guys so much, and you can max guys out. It's a little bit easier to retain your stars. You either retain them or they leave. Like that's literally what happens. The NFL, you see a lot of the teams that are, at least making the playoffs are guys that have good quarterbacks in the early part of their career where they're not paying them too much. They can fill the roster around them. But we saw Tom Brady stayed with the Patriots. He could have gotten more money on a lot of different teams over the course of his career, but he stayed where, he wanted to be, where the organization was right, where the team was built around him. And, he had a dynasty there in New England. And then, he does end up leaving and he finds a team that kind of structures it the same, and the same thing happened. And now you have that with, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and all these other sports. Yeah, the Dodgers are in the playoffs every year. That's, I guess, the biggest thing of people like, I don't want to watch regular season. The Dodgers are going to be in the playoffs, like barring some catastrophic flu that takes out the team for half the season. The Dodgers are going to be in the playoffs. But once you get to the playoffs, like there's no sport that has more random winners and everything else. And so it's hard to like really buy into the narrative of, yeah, it sucks that, if you're a team, if you're the Rockies, like you didn't spend anything this offseason, you don't have a chance going into the season. But that's every sport. Like every sport has teams that have no chance going into the season and have a chance to. The biggest difference also in all these other sports is that the teams are smaller, or on the, not football's not smaller, but you can be one quarterback can change your teams around. One legit player in the NBA can turn your team around. Baseball can't do that. You have to build a team. The Dodgers have built a team. They built an organization. They built everything that has now made it almost self-sustaining to a point where, okay, we either call guys up and they perform for the team, or we trade guys to get guys that perform for the team. And that's, a product of a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Tom Brady. Tom Brady famously structured his contract in a way that the Patriots could afford to build a team around him. And he was lauded for that. Everybody was like, what a great teammate, what a competitor, what a gamer. This dude just wants to win. Shohei Ohtani does the same thing, different way, but same thing. Structuring a contract in a way that the Dodgers can build around him. Cheater, ruining baseball, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I mean, the fact is those sports with salary caps have much less parity. And, you look at every Major League Baseball team goes through cycles where they make the playoffs. Like the Rockies are terrible right now. They were in the playoffs 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever it was. The A's are remarkably bad. They were in the playoffs, 3 or 4 years ago? Like it is, you can be terrible. The White Sox were in the playoffs 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. And then they were historically bad. There's cycles. And the fact that the Dodgers have chosen to maximize spending as much of their revenue on building the team out as they can, I like to think, even as a fan of another team, I would recognize, oh, that's a good way to run a baseball team. I wish my ownership would do this. I know as a Dodger fan, I love it.
Yeah, the main difference if baseball had a salary cap and Ohtani was a free agent is that Ohtani would have just signed a 10-year, $460 million. What was the present day value of his contract, and probably wouldn't have the deferrals, because that's probably how the structure would have been if there was a salary cap. And that's really the only difference. The Dodgers still would have got him.
So. Yeah, and if you got a salary cap, it's not like the Marlins are suddenly going to. The salaries are capped at $220 million. Marlins aren't going to spend $220 million. They're going to spend as little as they can still, and the Dodgers will still. There's never going to be a salary cap. It's not going to happen. But even if it did, people would have to realize, oh, guess it wasn't salary cap. Turns out the Dodgers are just a good organization.
Yeah. I do love everyone thinking there's going to be some crazy lockout when the new CBA is due because of all this that's going on, when owners, most of them particularly don't care what's going on right now. A lot of them are there for money, status, or whatever else, and winning is not at the forefront of their mind.
Yeah, and they're definitely not going to lock out over deferred money, because the owners and the players and every fan who actually understands it all like it. So,
yeah. All right, Jeff, you got anything else?
No, I've done 2 episodes today. I think that's probably good for me. So
yeah, big weekend, a lot of extra episodes. Go check them all out if you haven't listened to them. And we're starting the week right back again. I don't know how much more the Dodgers will give us to talk about, but there's still more to talk about for sure. I saw Paul Skeens made some comments that were non-committal to the Pirates. So, hey, we're not talking about Paul Skeens being a Dodger in 6 years. So that's gonna do it for today's episode. That's gonna do it for this weekend, or you're starting your week. I guess a lot of people have a day off, so you're probably if you listen to this on Monday, you might not be working right now. So go listen to all the other episodes that you haven't listened to. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen or any listen of your day. Make sure to find us wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to get notified when episodes are ready or when we are going live on YouTube. You can go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, 24/7 streaming channels from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us any questions or comments. You can send us you can send us an email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail. Send us a text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, cherish my advice, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.